Can you just talk about your wife?
Yeah.
Just and sort of coming together and what this all kind of meant for her and what this has done for sort of your relationship and your marriage?
Yeah. So, several different things kind of occurred. Number one, I would say the biggest thing was gratitude. I didn't think I was going to make it. And I was so grateful to wake up and still be alive. Um, I was elated. Um, it probably helped that I hadn't really done drugs up to that point in my life, and man, being high on super heavy
Yeah, yeah,
morphine and
yeah.
Dilaudid was
Yeah.
pretty awesome.
Pretty awesome. Yeah, yeah, for sure.
So, um, but I remember I came to, and the first thing I remember is I tried to talk, and just air came out, and the nurse came over and was like, "Hey, Lieutenant, you're not going to be able to talk. You're trached and you're wired shut." So I was like, "Okay, give me something to write with." And my commanding officer and command master chief were there, and I wrote out three questions. I said, "Are my guys okay?" And they said yes. Luke and Matt are out of surgery. They're good.
Wow.
And I said, okay. Has my wife been notified? And my CO said yes. I talked to her myself. She's good. They're coordinating things. She's going to meet you in Bethesda when you get there. And then I don't know why. I was like, do I still look pretty? And they were like, no. They're like, this will probably be an improvement. So good little humor. So I was in Baghdad. They moved me to Balad, which is where they treat head injuries. And I don't really remember a lot about that. I remember being in the ICU at Balad. And then they moved me to Landstuhl, Germany. And it was in Germany that they did some more stabilization surgeries. And I don't know if my teammate who flew with me was like, hey, do you want to talk to your wife? And I'm like, yes, but I couldn't talk. So I was like, hey, I'll write down the questions or write down and you relay. So we called my wife and I think the first thing I said was, hey, I got all shot up, but my wang's okay. Which, I mean, God forbid. And there are a lot of guys out there that unfortunately got their, privates blown off or shot off. So I am very thankful. And for those guys, and to the doctors out there, they're working on things like that. But, it was a big deal. And I wanted to let her know.
Yeah.
And he was so funny because he's like, are you fucking serious? Like,
I really got to say this.
Yeah, I really got to say this.
But I bet it made her,
It
she's
did.
not, my guy's still my guy.
She
He's
did.
all right,
Because that was the thing. She didn't know my mental state. They didn't really know. My CO, when he first called her, was like, hey, Jay's alive. He's been shot in the face, but we don't know yet. So, and then they loaded me on the plane to fly home. And I will tell you, I developed this. Probably the biggest fear I've ever felt in my life was this fear of how she was going to handle it, because I hadn't seen myself yet, but I knew, man, I mean, I'm trached. They're feeding me through a stomach tube. I mean, I've got, I'm too weak to move. I've got tubes coming out of everywhere. I'm on all this ICU equipment, and I knew I had no nose. I felt like a monster, and I was really terrified of how she was going to handle that, and how my kids were going to handle that. And, unfortunately, good or bad, I'd read a lot of stories about war that knew that, when individuals get wounded, that's an immense strain on the family. And there are unfortunately a lot of spouses who say, I didn't sign up for this. And there are stories of spouses showing up at Walter Reed and Bethesda Naval Hospital and like walking into a room with a severely wounded warrior and saying, nope. And taking rings off and putting them on the table and leaving. So I developed this huge fear of this. And we had been married 6 years, but I was afraid. I was afraid at how she would handle that. And finally we landed. They took me up to my room in the ICU, and the nurse was, I don't know, taking care of me, getting me situated. And she's like, I don't know, she's like, oh, you still have blood in your hair. And I'm like, you have to clean me up. Like, you know, it's like, I, like what? Like, dude, you're like totally blown to pieces. Like,
Yeah.
what the fuck is some blood in your hair going to make the difference? But I don't know. In my mind, like,
Mm.
hey, you have to make me as presentable as possible for
Mm.
my wife. And my wife at this point was standing outside the door. And she's like, your wife's outside. And I'm like, I'm not ready. And, finally she's like, your wife's still outside. And I was like, okay. And I was so afraid. I expected her to come in and like to be shocked, to gasp, to, I don't know, to not want to be close to me. Um, and my wife is amazing because she came in that room, she locked eyes with me. She walked straight up and pushed the, tubes out of the way and kissed me on the lips and was like, hey, we're gonna be okay. We're gonna get through this. And like I needed that. I mean, I'm pretty mentally strong, but to have someone like I needed that. Like I needed that. And man, it became like this driving power. And it became like, man, she earned her title, the long-haired admiral at that point. And so from that point forward, man, she was like my best nurse. Like, I mean, she was like running that place. Like she had a notebook and it's overwhelming. When you're severely wounded, you have teams of doctors and teams of nurses, and there's so much information. And man, she was tracking all of it. And when they finally let me out of the hospital after 8 weeks and sent me home, I was still really messed up. I'm in a wheelchair. I've got metal hardware out of my body. I'm still, they're feeding me through a stomach tube. I'm trached. I'm still wired shut, all these stitches and all this shit. And even though we had a home health nurse that would come 3 times a week to change dressings and all this, she had to do a lot of that. Trachs are disgusting. I wore a trach for 7 months and 2 days. It oozes mucus and nastiness. It gets clogged and it has to be constantly cleaned. And she did that. I was fed through a stomach tube. So my food had to be ground up. My meds, she had to use a mortar and pestle to like grind up my meds and put them in with my food. She never, ever complained, man, never. And I know it had to enter her mind. Like, we had 3 small kids, and now, you get this invalid husband who was living his dream to be a Navy SEAL warrior, and now he comes home and, you're having to take care of him. And I know in her mind, man, she says she didn't think it, but I know she had to. I mean, it's human, but man, you talk about strong emotional leadership. I know she had to think, why did you do this to us? But she never did, man. Always positive, always supportive. And so I owe so much to her. I write a lot about that in my book, The Trident, about how amazing she was and what an amazing team we are. Now we run our business together.
Right.
We're actually hopefully signing a deal on a relationship book because it's such a big thing. So many people ask us, like, how did you do this? SEAL teams have a 90% divorce rate. Wounded warriors have like an 85% divorce rate. So we have defied all these odds. And so she is the long-haired admiral, LHA for short. And she's pretty amazing.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? It's John, Bam Bam the dog. First, on behalf of both of us and everybody from the Real Ones team, I just want to sincerely thank you guys for tuning in. The folks that I bring on the show, they're family to me, and being able to tell their stories and bringing you into their world is something I'm just super proud of, and again, grateful that you guys tune in. We've decided we want to take things just a step further. It's a Patreon community, and basically what that means is if you become part of this community, look, I already bored Bam Bam. If you want to become a part of this community, you're going to be able to hear episodes early and all that, ad-free and all that good stuff. But there's all this behind-the-scenes footage, all this stuff that we've shot that really brings you into the folks that we've had on the show, really brings you into their world. Live chats with me and the folks that I bring on the show to talk about their world, talk about the issues that they're dealing with, about their triumphs and their tragedies. Just go to Patreon/Real Ones. on this website that you see right there, right on the screen, that's right in front of you. This whole idea was something about building bridges and bringing people together and bringing folks that often don't get the mic and giving the mic to them. So the fact that you guys tune in means the world. Anyways, again, thank you. Be good to each other out there. Rock and roll. I'm gonna get a workout in a little bit with my man Eric Linden, stunt coordinator from The Punisher. He's coming all the way up because we are about to get after it. And when that's done, he asked me in the car, are you gonna have my shake ready? And I know what that means. Am I gonna have my Sun Warrior shake? They've got the active protein, but they also have this collagen protein, which is amazing. They also have the Warrior blend, which is a little bit lighter if you're trying to cut. And I believe in it. I believe in that Sun Warrior stuff. Go to www.sunwarrior.com/real ones.